We've got a mid-season breakdown of the first round picks of the 2023 NHL Draft. We'll talk about their performances, how they're doing, keep you updated, all coming up on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi Kalikesh, joined by Sebastian High, and on today's show, we'll be breaking down the first round picks of the 2023 NHL Draft, keep you updated, and give you a mid-season breakdown of how they're doing in their respective leagues. In our first segment, we'll talk about picks 1 through 8. And then we'll go through 9 through 16 in our second segment, and then end things up with a selection of the picks 17 through 32. We selected 8 players from those in order to break down and give you an update on how they're going. Before we get into any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics and that treats 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, wherever that is, whether that's Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this, make sure to make us your first listen of the day and leave us a review if you can. Now let's get things started. We can obviously start at first overall. I think we all know how Connor Bedard's doing this season. Almost a point per game for the Chicago Blackhawks right now, and probably their best player, right?
Oh, by a large margin. There's
Yeah.
no player on the Blackhawks that really comes close to Bedard's impact in my eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, when he's competing with the likes of Jason Dickinson, who is having a very good season this year.
Yeah.
The door's wide open for Chicago to have a rookie as their best player, to put it lightly. But he's been playing some excellent hockey, and of course is injured with a fractured or broken jaw right now. And we'll see how he is playing when he gets back. But it's not the type of injury that usually really changes the way that players play the game, and especially offensive players, how they produce.
Yeah, and if I'm not wrong, it's an absence of, I think they said 4 to 6 weeks or 3 to 4 weeks, something like that. But
Yeah.
it shouldn't be long before he's back in action. Moving on to second, overall, the Anaheim Ducks selected Leo Carlsson. The midseason breakdown on him is pretty simple. He got injured, pretty much halfway through the season. He's been playing on and off, which is really good actually for his game, because it's kind of emulating what he would be facing in the SHL. And overall, I think it was on pace for 45 to 50 games, something like that, which is slightly more than what he'd be playing in the SHL, but not by a large enough margin that they're overloading him, which I think is really good for him. And a bit over half a point a game as well for him. I think it's 17 points in 27 games, something like that. Playing pretty good hockey for them, and hope he gets well soon as well.
He's healthy again. He
he's
just
healthy
got
again.
activated. Yeah.
Fantastic. So that's perfect. He'll be back in action, playing some really good hockey again. Moving on to third overall, Adam Fantilli. Great production for a draft was one player on a bad team, over half a point a game. Columbus is back in the tanking situation again, and are probably going to be picking in the top 3, top 4 of the 2024 NHL Draft. It's good that they're playing their young players and giving them good ice time. Adam Fantilli played, I think, a game or two on the fourth line about midway through the first half of the season. But now he's back to playing regular minutes, and that's really, really good for his game. At fourth overall, Will Smith, our first non-NHL player. Talk me through his transition to the NCAA, how that's going for him, and what's his line mate situation. I don't think anything's changed on that side, right?
Certainly made his transition a lot smoother to Boston College. That he was able to keep the same 2 wingers that he had in the NTDP at his side, and that trio was really like the best junior line last season by a long shot. And they've been very good this year as well. And they were even playing together at the World Junior Championships. So clearly they're not getting quite sick of each other's company just yet, and they're still playing some good hockey together. But Will Smith is the creative force on that line still, and while I think that Gabe Perreault is kind of like increased his workload on that line over the last year, where he's taking a bit more of that creative burden than he even really had last year in the NCAA, in the NTDP. which means that Will Smith hasn't had to carry quite as big of a load in that department this season. He's still been excellent, like registering 27 points in 19 games played with Boston College this season, which is like some really impressive production for a freshman. So
Yeah.
San Jose Sharks fans shouldn't be too worried with Will Smith. He's continuing to project very, very well and playing some excellent hockey.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great second half to the World Juniors as well, where he scored some big goals and big moments. Yeah, he's shown he has that factor in
For
his game,
sure.
which is really good. Moving on to fifth overall, the Montreal Canadiens selected David Reinbacher. Halfway through the season, one thing's very clear: he's on a bad team. And it's honestly it's I've tried to watch their hockey and try to enjoy it. It's impossible. Like it's a really difficult program in Cloten in the Swiss National League. He still has 7 points in 21 games, which is well below his production from last year. But he's been their best player over the past 3 or 4 games. He's been taking a lot of shots, putting a lot of pucks on net, activating a lot in the offensive zone, and playing some good defensive hockey. There were a couple of bad penalties he took in those 3 or 4 games recently, but overall, I think the move for Reinbacher next year is to come over to the AHL, and depending on how the Montreal Canadiens feel about Logan Mailloux and Lane Hudson, he might have a top pair role in Laval, which would be really, really good for his game as well. But then we go to sixth overall. We've got Dmitry Simashev. Wild variation in his ice time over in the KHL right now. He can play anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. Like it's unpredictable. He has 7 points in 41 games. Nothing overwhelming, but a really good prospect for the Arizona Coyotes. A prospect who, given the right development, given the right circumstances, can play regular 20 minute games in the KHL. I think it's a matter of time before we see that, but I don't think it's wise to bring him over to North America before he sees that regular 20-minute ice time. Overall, yeah, I'm fairly impressed with Simashev's game in general, but I think it's seventh overall. The player that a lot of fans are already calling a steal at seventh overall, and Matvei Michkov. He's up
Which he
to
was.
yeah, to be fair, he's a really, really good, really skillful player. He's got 29 points in 34 KHL games, which is really good, but
It's a bad team.
yeah, but it's a very different KHL this year, right?
It certainly is. Like we are seeing far more like young players producing at higher levels than in the past, and young players being given the reins of teams to an extent that we haven't seen previously, because the overall quality is pretty consistently dropping in KHL hockey. Like if you
Yeah.
look back 6-7 years and what KHL hockey was then compared to what it is now, there's a very clear step down in terms of overall level. Like it wasn't long ago that the KHL was like quite clearly the second best league in the world, and that is now a three-way race with the SHL and the AHL for sure. Like
Yeah.
there is a lot of competition for that title, and that said, I think that Matvei Michkov is still playing some excellent hockey. Like, yes, he's not a perfect player and he never will be. There's always
Mhm.
going to be warts in Michkov's game because they are what allow him to be so game breaking offensively, is that there are some defensive sacrifices. And while those have certainly lessened in the last year, they're definitely still present in his game. And that said, I do really like how he's been progressing as a playmaker this season. Whereas last year, playing with Sochi, he was very much just like keeping the puck on a stick the entire game because like he couldn't pass to any line mate with any hope of them making anything with it.
Yeah.
Whereas this year, there's either or probably a combination of the two, but there's either more trust in line mates and also just an a more mature game where he knows that even when he doesn't trust a line mate, there are many moments in a game where getting the puck onto their stick gets the puck into a better position than where he has it in that moment. And he's
Yeah.
learning that slowly. And the production's certainly indicative of that. But what are some of the doubts that you have in his game? Because I know you've watched a bit of him and maybe not been as enthusiastic as I have been so far this season.
Yeah, it's just overall there's a lack of translatability to his overall habits. Beyond just the defensive issues, those will always be present. You're never going to get a net positive defensive player out of
No.
Michkov, but on the puck, sometimes he has like he won't really cut back on zone entries, and that's one thing I really want a player to do is cut back. Keep their head up, look at their options, because that's a situation you'll face a lot in the NHL. And obviously, he's very young. I'm not as sour on him as as a lot of people are. And part of the reason why he slipped to seventh is that there are those deficiencies. But overall, I think Mishkov has a great opportunity in Sochi to apply his trade. And at the same time, I feel like there's a reason why SKA is adamant on not playing him. There are some deficiencies in this game that make him an overall nuisance. If you were playing him in a bottom six, or even on your second line, he's at his best when he's on a top line with a player who can handle the defensive responsibilities, and that's what he's getting in Sochi, and it's great for his game. But yeah, I do have my questions. But moving on to number 8 and our final player of the first segment, the Washington Capitals selected Ryan Leonard at 8th overall. He's got 22 points in 19 games, 11 goals. He's the goal scoring option on that line with Smith and Perreault. He's really leaning into that role on that Boston College line and is doing a great job of it. And he's another player who had a really good World Juniors and showed what he can do when he's given the opportunity to drive play on that line. Yeah, really, really good play from him and a great pick from Washington at 8th overall. And that wraps things up for our first segment. Now we'll talk about picks 9 through 16. A lot of really good options in there, players having really good or really bad seasons. We'll get into that after these messages from our sponsors over at Jace Medical. I know we come to sports to escape some of the crazy realities of real life, but let's talk for a minute about preparing for real life and make sure you stay ahead of things. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That's obviously very scary. I can't imagine running out of antibiotics at a time like this. It's obviously something that's very terrifying. And supply chain issues, you can't really have much control on that. Not having control on your supply of medications can obviously be something that's stressful and nerve-wracking. That's where Jace Medical comes in. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial infections, whether that's sinus infections, skin infections, UTIs, respiratory infections, especially with COVID resurging as of late. I had COVID a couple days ago. It was awful. Trust me, I could have used a Jace case. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. That'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispersed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of their regular costs. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So visit jacemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your first offer. Check it out. Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment, we're talking about picks 9 through 16 of the 2023 NHL Draft, giving you a breakdown of how their seasons are going. We start off at 9th overall with Nate Danielson of the Detroit Red Wings, a pick I was really surprised by on draft day because usually at 9th overall, you're still looking for that offensive upside. I don't see much out of Nate Danielson that gives me the impression that we have a top 6 player, and right now in his draft plus 1 season in the WHL is at exactly a point per game, which is a step down from his production from last year. It's not really good for a draft plus 1 player to be only a point per game in Canadian junior leagues, but he's still an elite defensive center. He's still the captain of his team in Brandon, and overall just a leader on the ice through his play. He's a player you can really depend on. And I think that's what Detroit was looking for here in Danielson. And would he have slipped any further than this? Probably by 3-4 picks, maybe. But even then, I think, given who they picked up at 17th overall, if you flip those two, I have no problem with this pick, right? I mean, it's a good pick. But at 10th overall, we have Dalibor Dvorsky of the St. Louis Blues. A good pick at 10. I like this one. 18 goals, 18 assists for 36 points in 23 games. He's really their power play sharpshooter and a great option in his league right there. But talk me through his World Juniors play, because I feel like that was good but not great, right?
Yeah, I think overall it's been a very solid D+1 season for Dvorsky. I think that the move to the OHL and to the Sudbury Wolves was a really, really solid one. I mean, getting to play with the likes of Quentin Musty is certainly helpful for development, and Dvorsky's often been leaned on to be a creative outlet, even though it's not really been his strength. He's more of a linear two-way, strong defensive player and sniper. So getting to play with a guy like Quentin Musty is really allowing him to play his style of play, and it's translating to high-end production. I mean, he's up to 36 points and 18 goals in 23 games, right? And at the World Juniors, I thought that he was playing some really solid two-way hockey. Like, he's always been decent at the World Juniors. He's always been a bit quiet at times. And maybe not like the flashiest hockey in the world, but I think that he's been playing some pretty solid games so far this season from the ones that I've personally caught, and there's been a pretty clear progression from his draft years. So I'd assume that Blues fans and at the Blues organization are pretty happy with how he's progressed so far.
Absolutely. Moving on to 11, we have Tom Villander of the Vancouver Canucks. A decent pickup, but one I was really still surprised with at 11th overall. A bit high for my tastes, but overall, he's having a respectable start for Boston University in the NCAA. He's got 9 points in 17 games played so far in college, and really good for him. He's been paired with Lane Hudson recently. He's been playing decent minutes with an elite offensive defenseman in Lane Hudson in that league. And yeah, overall with Villandry getting a really dependable, really aggressive defenseman who really loves to push the pace both offensively and defensively. He's in your face defensively. He's always closing gaps early and using his skating really well. That's another thing that really stands out with Villander. As soon as you start watching him, he just explodes off his edges, which is something you really want in a right-handed defenseman. And yeah, if you're going for a right-handed D at this stage, it was between him and the 17th pick in this draft, which we'll talk about later on. But yeah, I'm impressed with this one. Daniil Buch at 12th overall to the Arizona Coyotes, a pick I was again surprised with, but he's been doing really good in the KHL, right?
He has been. I think I've always been a bit of a bigger fan of him than you have. But no, he's up to 17 points in 39 KHL games, which is just about half a point a game. And he's been like a real goal scoring threat in the games that I've caught. I think I've watched around 2 games of his this season, and both games that I watched, he was really creating a lot offensively. He was using his size to protect the puck. He was using his reach to really access different passing lanes. And while he's certainly far from a complete or refined player, that there's still a long road to go there before he's going to be a well-rounded NHLer. That's probably a 4 or 5 year process if it happens.
Yeah.
But still, he's adding things to his tool belt, and I can see an overall toolkit starting to take shape, which really was not there last year, and was probably the biggest argument against Daniil Buch as a high-end NHL prospect was individual tools, but no toolkit. Things are starting to come together a little bit, so we'll see how he keeps progressing. But the early returns here are a reason for some optimism for Coyotes fans.
Absolutely, for sure. And yeah, I'm fairly impressed with this game. But at 13th overall, we have a player who should not
Our
have stepped
boy.
this far. Our boy, Zach Benson of the Buffalo Sabres. He's playing NHL minutes already, and he has 14 points in 34 games. At first glance, it doesn't look like much, but overall, you look at what Benson is doing in those games, and we're talking about one of the most impactful players on the Buffalo Sabres already at this age, translating extremely well to the NHL, right?
For sure, he's been so good. I've really been enjoying watching Zach Benson. He's certainly playing his style of game, and I think that's the important takeaway here. Not that he's under half a point a game. He's 18, like that. Like we saw Slavkovsky go at like a quarter point a game last season as an NHL rookie, and he went first overall. So I think Zach Benson's production, he's already out producing Slavkovsky's rookie year, and it's quite good. But he is really a very, very high intensity forechecker. He is applying a lot of pressure. He's playing some really solid defensive hockey. He is creating space for his teammates. He's getting to dirty areas. He's doing all the things that you would want Zach Benson to do for you, and he's already doing it at 18 years old. So I think Buffalo Sabres fans know that they have a pretty special player in him, and that a little bit of patience, giving him a year or two to really like entrench himself as a consistent top 6 option at the NHL level is really going to pay dividends.
100% for sure. I'm a huge fan of this kid. Just
Oh
every
yeah.
single shift, he's bringing something. But at 14th overall, the Pittsburgh Penguins selected Braden Yeager. He's got 45 points in 30 games, which is really good. He's taken a big offensive step up and with Moose Jaw and has become kind of one of their offensive leaders. He played at the World Juniors, which wasn't the case for a lot of players in the same league. And overall, I mean, you know, obviously playing with Jagger Firkus has his pluses, but I think that Jaeger has proven that his offensive game is a bit more versatile than we initially thought. Even though the defensive side of his game still isn't polished, I think that it's good enough that he'll be able to make do at the NHL level. And yeah, I'm really impressed with the addition here for Pittsburgh, who barely missed the playoffs, and we're looking for some of that offensive injection from one of their prospects. I think that Jaeger could eventually become that, especially with a couple of years to develop his game and get even better at what he does. But then at 15th overall, Matthew Wood to the Nashville Predators. I think this is a great pick from them here. The production hasn't been outlandish, 14 points in 20 games, but overall, Matthew Wood brings a really specific style of hockey that works really well. I know you likened him a lot to Tyler Toffoli, and I see that. A really good goal scorer with not the best skating, but really good defensive impact just from being really smart, being well positioned, and playing within structure really well, right?
Exactly, and while it's been a bit slower this season so far for him production-wise, I thought he was one of Canada's better players at the World Junior Championship, which was a little bit ironic considering that he was barely playing at all. Like, I think the most he logged in a single game was like 10 minutes and 50 seconds against Germany. He was very much a 13th forward on that Team Canada, and every single shift that I really like zeroed in on him on, he was making a positive impact, and he scored a couple, or he scored like that one very like nice goal on the breakaway, and I thought that he was a pretty solid player that with more ice time would have really made a bigger difference than some of the players that were just getting like de facto 15 plus minutes a night on that Team Canada. But Wood definitely represents a swing for the fences for Nashville. Like, he is intelligent. He does have this like slightly safer floor because of that intelligence, but it is a swing on the raw goal scoring upside here and the offensive IQ.
Absolutely. And then last but not least in our second segment, at 16th overall, we've got Samuel Honzek of the Calgary Flames. With Samuel Honzek, obviously there was a huge injury at the start of the season, so he only just started playing before the World Juniors. He's up to 11 points in 9 games right now in junior, and yeah, had a good but not overwhelmingly great World Juniors. Was one of their key players, but wasn't one of their marquee ones. You know, obviously there was that top line for Slovakia of Philip Meshar, Adam Shakora, and Servak Petrovsky, and those were really the play drivers. But on a second to third line, he was oscillating there with Dalibor Dvorsky. Played decent minutes, gave him decent results, and especially early in the tournament in his group stage games, you saw Samuel Honzek was able to make a difference. But he's still picking things up slowly but surely, and kind of moving forward with his draft plus one season. And I'm hoping that the production comes in and blows us out of the water in the second half of the season, because he was a player I was really high on in his draft year. He took some time. I wasn't really high on him to start with, but he grew on me, and yeah, I'm a pretty big fan. 16 is a tiny bit rich, but still good enough. I think that he's worth a pick here for Calgary. He's going to be a really interesting prospect. But that wraps things up for our second segment. We'll get into our third segment where we talk about picks 17 through 32. Again, it's a selection of these guys. We've chosen 8 of the 16 players left in this first round to kind of talk about. And we'll kind of get through their games, how they're doing, how they're producing, and we'll get into that right after these messages from our sponsors over at Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Indeed has a bunch of options to get you started on finding the best quality employees for your program as possible. First and foremost, it doesn't just help you hire, it helps you hire faster and more accurately. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job site, according to a recent Indeed survey. And Indeed is one of the only platforms where you can schedule, screen, message all in one platform where you can hire players for your team as fast as possible. Overall, one of the things I love about Indeed and that made hiring at my day job really fast and easy is that it's really user friendly. You can just hop on Indeed, make yourself a profile, and search through jobs really easily and accurately. It gives you price ranges, so you don't have to worry about not knowing what your salary is going to be, and a bunch of other options like that. So listeners to the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at indeed.com/locked on. Just go to indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Alrighty, so let's close things off on this first round breakdown of the 2023 NHL Draft for the mid-season. We'll be talking about picks 17 through 32. We've selected 8 of the players from this range to talk about who are having either really good seasons or overall have underwhelmed massively. We'll start off with Axel Sandin Pellikka of the Detroit Red Wings, an offensive, mobile right-handed defenseman, which is pretty much what every team's looking for, right? And he's having a great season over in the SHL right now.
He's not doing bad at all. Like, he has 9 goals and 13 points in 25 SHL games, which is good. He's almost like he's not that far under half a goal a game. So
Yeah.
that elite level shot for defenseman is certainly already paying some dividends shortly after being drafted, and he's quite clearly the best shooter among all defensemen draft eligible last year. So that has continued to be the fact this season. And at the World Juniors, he was playing an instrumental role for Sweden to get to that gold medal game and to really fight it out with the USA for the first 2 periods of that hockey game. Like, he was really key, and he's grown tremendously as a defensive player. Like, the offensive game has been standout for a good while now, going back to the beginning of last year, but the defensive ability has really come a ways. And like, I know you specifically really were impressed by his defensive performances at the recent World Juniors.
Yeah, absolutely. He had a fantastic World Juniors on both sides of the puck, and Axel Sandin Pellikka is always going to be an offensive leaning player. You see it on the power play. I mean, he has probably the best goal scorer in that tournament to his left, Jonathan Lekerimäki, and he's just rifling pucks on net back to back to back. There's a confidence that comes with his offensive skill set that's really good, but he's translated that confidence to his defensive game really well, and not to a point where he's taking himself out of plays. He's confident in his ability to step up on players, to get a stick in lanes, to disrupt play really well. I was really overall very impressed with the defensive upgrades in this game and how he's translated the confidence to that side. Then we go over to 19th overall. We've got the Chicago Blackhawks selecting Oliver Moore in that range. And yeah, Oliver Moore was a player I had ranked at 8th overall in his draft year. I was really high on him. I loved his game, and I still do. He's probably the best skater from this class, or almost definitely the best skater in this class. He skates effortlessly, but also skates with effort, if that makes sense. Like, he doesn't need to put in that much work, but he's just pedal to the metal. The effort, the work rate is there on top of the real good skating ability. He's got 17 points in 22 games in the NCAA right now. And yeah, overall, just playing some really good hockey over there. And for a 19th overall pick, that's good production. And yeah, overall, I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Oliver Moore in the NCAA. Then we skip over to 21st overall. We've got our first underperformer of this first round. Talk me through Charlie Stramel's struggles here for Minnesota at 21st overall.
Yeah, it's been difficult for Charlie Stramel. Like, he's not in the easiest environment to play in, as just like last year. Like, Wisconsin is not the strongest program, but the drop off this season has been stark. Last season, it felt like he was the only player on that Wisconsin team that was trying to create anything, and the production faltered as a result of that. This season, he's been stuck on the 4th line for certain stretches, and he's only logged 6 points in 18 games, 3 goals, 3 assists, and all 3 assists came in a single game against Penn State, which is not the strongest program in the NCAA. And it has been a rough ride for him. He was also not brought to the World Junior Championship by Team USA, and they brought him last year, which usually teams bring players that they brought the year before when they're still eligible, and he was an exception to that rule this year. It has been difficult for him. There's definitely still a pathway to the NHL. Like, it's not all doom and gloom for Charlie Stramel, but the upside that was there as a D-1 in his NTDP season, where there were some flashes of tremendously impressive playmaking ability, that has now not really been like seen in like the last like almost 2 years.
Yeah.
So the high end upside that was kind of there, at least like below the surface a couple years ago with Stramel, is certainly fading right now. So we'll see how he keeps progressing this season. The back half of the year is going to be a big one for him to kind of bounce back. And Minnesota obviously was going to hope for him to be a better defensive player and double down the defense. But there's definitely a long road for him.
For sure. Moving on to 22nd overall, we've got Oliver Bonk of the Philadelphia Flyers. 44 points in 33 games for Oliver Bonk is fairly impressive. I knew there was some offense, you know, beyond just the shot from the point. But since he's been playing on the first power play there for London, it's been ever more clear that he has that offensive skill set to make plays in transition, to pass the puck along the blue line and find lanes to get a shot through accurately, but also with intent. Timing his shot with players moving in front, that kind of thing. And yeah, overall, he's improved those areas of his game. I still don't really like the breakout game all that much. I still have a lot of concerns with his decision making in transition and his ability to move pucks up the ice. But overall, Oliver Bonk has a really good skill set. Is really reliable defensively and strong in his own zone. If he continues to improve his decision making, his vision, his scanning habits, all of that, you could really see a path for him on a second pair. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And then at 23rd overall, we've got Gabe Perreault from the New York Rangers, who's just unfair this season in the NCAA. He has 30 points in 19 games, playing on that line with Smith and Leonard, and has done a fantastic job of driving that line in terms of his ability to find players in transition. He plays give and go off of Will Smith like no one else. He finds Ryan Leonard in soft ice like no one else. It's just it's beautiful hockey. I still, obviously, the skating is a concern. Obviously the inside game is a concern, but the playmaking is out of this world, right?
It is. Like, I think Gabe Perreault is certainly convincing a lot of doubters, and we are among those this season. And he's just playing some like incredibly impressive hockey where he's really leveraging his high end intelligence to create advantages with the same ease at the NCAA level that he showed at the NTDP level. So where is he going to hit a wall in terms of like levels that he moves up? I don't know. It might be the AHL, but that would be really unfortunate for Rangers fans. But
Yeah,
I think you're getting a pretty fun, at the very least, middle six creator out of Gabe Perreault.
absolutely. Yeah, he's so fun to watch. But then Quentin Musty at 26 overall to the San Jose Sharks. He's got
Great pick.
46 points in 28 games. He's a fantastic player, and a player that we had a debate about regarding whether he should be at the World Juniors for USA or not. And I mean, they did well without him, but oh
Didn't
my
matter,
goodness.
which we
Yeah.
knew. Yeah.
Yeah. It did not matter. But overall, Quentin Musty's fantastic. Still very raw in terms of his decision making, his scanning, his awareness, but the offensive toolkit is next to none in the OHL right now, among draft plus ones, except for maybe one or two players. Then at 28th overall, the Toronto Maple Leafs selected Easton Cowan, who now has 50 points in 28 games in the OHL for the London Knights. And yeah, just this player's unfair in the OHL. He's too good for this level already. Um, and yeah, just he showed at the World Juniors that he could be kind of an off ice leader. He showed at the World Juniors that he could be a player who does good habits well. But overall, he had a poor tournament. Just the puck wasn't going in. He was creating a lot, but nothing was going in. It was the same for him and Matt Savoy. Same concern. Both of them just weren't able to find the back of the net, despite doing relatively good things overall in terms of what they were choosing to do on the ice. And then 30th overall to end things off, we have Bradley Nadeau of the Carolina Hurricanes, a player who his selection raised some eyebrows on draft day because a lot of people weren't really familiar with his game, but we were. And to me, it comes as no surprise that he has 27 points in 20 games in the NCAA.
Not at all. He is excellent, extremely dynamic. Carolina drafts very, very well, and this is no exception. Nadeau has incredible upside. He could be a first line player if everything pans out. The offensive toolkit is really versatile and really impressive. He has a ridiculous shot. He's incredibly intelligent, really starting to layer in delays into his game to really maximize space and time at the NCAA level. It's been a very smooth transition for him from the BCHL to the NCAA, which certainly is promising for Hurricanes fans. And yeah, I don't think Canes fans are going to have to wait too long to see him make the transition to pro hockey. Give it like maybe 2 years, but he's going to be very good very soon.
Absolutely. But that wraps things up for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our next episode as we break down the rounds 2 through 7. We've chosen a selection of players doing good in those rounds. We'll get into their games fairly soon. This has been Hattie Kalakash with Sebastian High, and we hope you tune in next time.